Right, welcome back again. Sorry about that little glitch there. Right, so we're talking this week about Bracha number 12, which is called Birkat Haminim, which, according to the Sachs translation, is called Against Heretics, which of course is a loose translation because Birkat Haminim. What have you got again? Against informers. Okay, so you've got our scroll's got heretics and Sachs has got informers. But both of them have got against, which is not what it means. Birkat Haminim means the blessing of. So we have to look at that. Minim, we just said before, was a minim means min is a type, is a gender. It also means a heretic. Okay, so what we just said before everybody was able to join the Zoom and we got going again was that this bracha was not part of the original Shemonah Esrei. It was not part of the original 18 brachot. Who wrote the 18 brachot or who ordered the 18 brachot? The Anshe Knesset Agdolah. And when was the 19th bracha added? Yeah, not long afterwards. It was definitely at the time of the let's call them the Judeo-Christian sects. We'll come back to it in a minute, Jeff. But you're right. It's mentioned in the Gemara. Okay, it's mentioned in the Gemara, and so if it's mentioned in the Gemara, then the latest it could possibly be was round about 500-600 when the Gemara was put together. It dates from some time between the Anshe Knesset Agdolah and the time of the Gemara. So it's that sort of period between the Mishnah and the Gemara. So we're talking a period between 200 and 500 CE when the 19th bracha was added. So the obvious question, which Jeff has partly answered already, is why? And the reason is because they felt they needed an extra bracha specifically for this these heretics that we're going to read about in a minute. Now, Paul said just before we went on to record that Rabbi Lepra had pointed out that Zichrono Livracha, yes, fabulous man, incredibly knowledgeable and an excellent teacher. I only had the zechut of knowing him right at the end of his life and didn't know him particularly well, but I knew a lot of people who knew him well, who spoke very, very highly of him. Study group, Jewish youth study groups particularly. So, yes, so he said, Paul, again for us, please, nice and loud.
Yeah, it used to have different wording, not Balam
So basically, there are all sorts of different versions of this bracha, because, and you'll see why. I'm going to show you a Gemara now, and you'll see why it's not quite so clear. We have, thank you. We have a standardized Ashkenaz version now, but even that, if you look in various different Sidurim, and certainly the Nusach Sfard is slightly different as well. Let's just read what we've got in the standard Nusach Ashkenaz. Okay, Barbara, come on. You've got the Sachs there. You don't get any more standard than that. Singer's prayer book. By the way, you should only ever daven out of something that's authorized. Okay, the authorized prayer book. Okay.
That's why I didn't say Shemonah in the morning.
Yeah. Right. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Right. So, read out the Hebrew for us, Barbara. Yeah. Read out the Hebrew. Okay, so that is not what I have. Okay, I have slightly different in my Nusach Ashkenaz. We'll look at the Nusach Sfard in a minute. The differences are, you said, and all your, and we've got v'chol oivei amecha. Okay, or Amacha, you're right, Amacha. Although it should be Amacha. Anyway, Amacha, so let's translate, and we'll do the two versions. Velamal shinim. What are lamal shinim? Okay, so what is the root of that word? Lashon is the root of it. What kind of lashon? Hara. Lashon hara. This is the verb of lashon hara. Okay, so you know that in Hebrew, once you understand how Hebrew works, it's at the same time easy and difficult, because it's easy because you work on roots, and you can have the same root for a verb and a noun. You've just got to know how to build the word that you're looking for. That's the easy bit. The difficult bit is to know which part of the root you have to, not which part of the root, but how you build the root. So, for example, take the root dalad reish chaf, derech. Okay, that's a way. So the first bit's easy. That's the noun. Derech is the way. A person who leads the way is called a madrich, because that's the verb, madrich. Okay, and the madrich will lead the derech on the midracha. What's the midracha? The pavement, or for you, it's the sidewalk. The sidewalk. Okay. On the island. So that's, and so velam al shinim. So the and well, that's for a kickoff. Why is there a the at the beginning of the bracha? We'll come back to that in a minute. La 2 or 4. Malshinim. Can you see how that's a verb? Malshin. Malshin is the verb of lashon, and it's talking about malshinim ra. Okay, so vela malshinim is the slanderers. That's a very good translation. Slanderers. Slander is speaking badly about a person, as opposed to libel, which is writing something bad about a person. Okay, libel is the written word. Slander is the oral. So velam al shinim, and to the slanderers, we'll come back who they're slandering in a sec. Al tahi tikva, let there not be any hope. In other words, get rid of them. So who are they slandering? Who are these people that who are they slandering?
Their own people, their own brothers.
Okay, Hannah says that they're slandering the Jews. Who else might it be that they're slandering?
The Tzedukah might be
God. We're talking here, so now we need to go back a step and understand where this bracha came from. So I'm going to take you to the Gemara. I haven't got it up ready on the screen, but maybe I'll just get it on the screen for the Zoomers. 1 second. It's quite easy. It's brilliant. Sfaria is so brilliant. You can just get it up immediately. It's on Brachot, page 28b. I'll just find it for you. There we are. Brachot 28b. And I'll read it to you in a minute. This is just loading. Okay, so where is it? It's right towards the end of the page. There we go. Right, let me share the screen 1 second with you guys. Zoom, share screen. Mara, share. Right, tell me when you can see it. Yeah, got it? Good. Okay, so what we've got here is, I'll read it to the people in the room. Tanu Rabbanan, we learnt in a Bracha. Okay, what is a Bracha?
No, but it's not exactly in the...
Not included in the final version of the Mishnah, but it was known about as a teaching of the rabbi. So that dates it, doesn't it? It dates it to around about the time of the Mishnah. So the early part of the period that I was telling you. I told you that if it's written in the Gemara, it must be before 500 when this was written. But now, Tanu Rabbanon, we learned in a Bracha, then it must be a bit older. But now we're gonna fix the time very clearly now. Because this Bracha says as follows: Shimon HaPakuli. Okay, Shimon HaPakuli. This chap called Shimon HaPakuli, I don't know what that word Pakuli means, but you know what his job was? It must be something to do with his job, because the Gemara tells us that he was a mocher tzemer gefen. What's tzemer gefen?
Oh.
Cotton wool, cotton. He was a cotton merchant.
Oh, cotton, yeah.
This is what he said. Listen to this. Hisdir Shemonah Esrei brachot lifnei Rabban Gamliel al haseder beyavne. He ordered the order of the Shemonah Esrei before Rabban Gamliel in Yavne. Okay, in Yavne. And the footnote says, Tefilah Shemonah Esrei nitkaneh al yedei Ezra v'anshei Knesset Agdola. The 18 brachot were established by Ezra and the Anshei Knesset Agdola. Shahayu bitchilat bayit sheni, at the beginning of the second temple. So we're talking 500 BCE ish. Okay, velo al yedei Shimon HaPakuli beyavne. It wasn't that he wrote them, like it says there. It doesn't say he wrote them. It says hisdir, which again is a verb from the word seder. What does seder mean? Order. So hisdir is the past tense. He ordered them. Okay. Yeah.
He compiled them.
She'anshe Knesset Agdola kavu seder mesuyam lebrachot. The Anshe Knesset Agdola, fixed a certain order that these brachot should be in. Ve'hismichu seder zeh al drashat hamikraot, and they used various psukim to support their opinion on the order that the brachot should be. Okay, says the footnote here: B'meshach hashanim, over a period of time, nishtakach haseder hakavua lebrachot. The fixed order became forgotten, from lishkoach, to forget. It became forgotten, which is why Rabbi Yehuda Nasi had to write down the Mishnah in the first place, because everything was starting to get forgotten. Starting to be forgotten. Started to forget, forgotten. Yeah, it didn't sound right. Started to be forgotten, okay? So the order of these brachot, which was originally fixed by the Anshe Knesset Gedolah, became forgotten. V'Shimon HaPakuli, and this cotton salesman, Chazar v'yased et haseder hakavua litfilah. He went back, not went back in time, obviously, but he managed to return it to its fixed place. So this is what, when it says hisdir, it means that he ordered it back in its place. Now, he must have been a pretty impressive guy, because the Gemara actually says, hisdir Shemonah Esrei brachot lifnei Rabban Gamliel. Okay, now we've fixed it, haven't we now?
What does that mean? Before Rabban Gamliel?
I think it means in front of. I think it means during his tenure, yeah.
He ordered them and gave it to Rabban.
Yeah, I think that's what it means.
It doesn't mean in time.
No, in front of, as opposed to before in time. No, you're right, Hannah. It means lifnei hamelech, right? In front of.
Also be as opposed.
So he at the time. So now, no, it doesn't mean that. No, it means that he fixed this, the order of the brachot. He refixed it. Let's call it. He refixed the order of the brachot. Lifnei Rabban Gamliel, in front of, in the face of, if you like. Yeah. In other words, in the tkufa of, in his reign. So now we know exactly when it was. It was at the time when Rabban Gamliel was the Nasi, okay, which was in Yavne, okay. shortly after the destruction of the second temple. How do we know that? What happened? The second temple destroyed. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai said, "Ten li Yavne v'chachamea, give me Yavne and its wise people." Okay, it's very nice. What's that got to do with our 19th bracha? Well, I'll tell you what it's got to do with it. Everything, because the next words of the Gemara, which is right at the bottom of this page, over here in the on the Zoomers, Amar lahem Rabban Gamliel lechachamim. Rabban Gamliel said to the Chachamim, Klum yesh Adam sheyodea letaken birkat hatzadukim? Question mark. Klum.
Nothing.
Nobody. Is there any? Klum yesh. It's a question. Klum yesh Adam. Is there nobody? Sheyodea, who knows, letaken, to correct or to establish, birkat hatzadukim, the bracha of the Saj. No, not Sadikim, Sadukim, the Sadducees. Now we're getting somewhere. Now, this was the time where the Sadducees, the Sadukim, why are they called Sadukim, by the way? Where's that name come from? Sadukim. The high priest. Sadok was the high priest. And the Sadukim were, their power base was in the Beit HaMikdash. Okay? They were the Kohanim. They were the elite. They were the party of the elite. The Prushim, that's what we come from. The Pharisees, they were, as it were, the party of the people.
The great and what?
They were the party of the people. The Tzadukim, their power base was the Kohanim and the elite and the rich. Now, of course, when the Beit HaMikdash was destroyed, their power base was lost because the Kohanim were out of a job. So it started to be a situation where the Tzadukim's power started to wane. And what happens when somebody's or a group of people's power starts to wane?
They get frustrated.
They get frustrated and they start to cause
trouble.
And that's what happened. There was a big, there were always big fights between the Tzedukim and the Perushim. But the Perushim, after the destruction, the Perushim were very much in ascendancy, and the Tzedukim became a thorn in their sides. It was almost like guerrilla warfare at that time. So now you can see where this bracha came from. The Gemara doesn't call it Birkat Haminim, calls it Birkat Hatzadukim, because they were the sect at that time that were causing trouble. And so what happened was another fellow stood up, Ahmad Shmuel HaKatan. Shmuel HaKatan, the little Shmuel. Okay, the little Shmuel stood up as opposed to Shmuel Agadol. Okay. He stood up, right? Shmuel HaKatan, and it's the Sefaria commentary says, who was one of the most pious men of that generation. He stood up, v'tikna, and he established it. He established it. Okay, thank you. Now, what happened then was something really amazing. L'shana acheret, the next year, following year, avar Shmuel HaKatan lifnei ateva. Shmuel HaKatan came before the Amud to Daven. Uk'she'agia lebracha zu, and when he got to this bracha, shechacha, he forgot it. He couldn't remember. He was the one that wrote it in the first place, and then he couldn't remember it. Okay, there's a little footnote that says, "Me'ikar adin asur lichtov Torah shebal peh." He couldn't write it down. You'll say to me, "Why, dummy? Why didn't you write it down?" Well, until Rabbi Yehuda Nasi wrote it all down,
it wasn't allowed to be.
It wasn't allowed. It's actually forbidden to write Torah shebal peh. Once he wrote it down, it was written down, and that was done. That was what he wasn't really. This is what's called ra b'mi'uto. the better of two evils, because it was either it would all get forgotten or it would be written down. And he wrote it down reluctantly and with a heavy heart, because you're not meant to write it down. And why you're not meant to write it down? No, because it's meant to be dynamic. It's meant to change from generation to generation. You pass it on and it gets, yes, change, exactly. And the problem, of course, is that once, yes, it's meant to be reinterpreted in every generation. The problem is once it's written down, it then becomes, as it were, written in stone. So the Torah Sheba'al Peh became part of the Torah Shebichsav. And from there, we have got a lot of the problems that we have in the way halacha has developed or not developed is because the Mishnah was written down. Now, you say, oh, well, it would have been better if he hadn't written it down. Well, it would have been worse if he hadn't written it down because he'd forgotten the whole lot. So it was definitely a case of ra b'miuto, of the better of two evils.
I'm not quite sure that it's because it was written down, because there appears to have been trouble in the Jewish nation long before he wrote the Torah.
Well, I think that's why he wrote it, because there were all these different sects at that time. There was the Tzedukim, there was the Isim, the Essenes, and then there started to be the Judeo-Christians, which developed into the Christians. And he was absolutely right, wasn't he? You could see the writing was on the wall. You had to write it down, otherwise it would have all. Writing was in the book, yeah. The writing was in the book. So let's just go back to the Gemara. So he forgot it. He wasn't allowed to write it down. Rak bitkufa mu'ucheret hitiru zot mishum et la'asot lashem. Only later was it permitted, because it was a case of, we had to. So va'af brachot bichlal isur zeh, and these brachot fell into that prohibition of writing them down. Ushum kach hitpalelu bal peh. They all davened bal peh, because off by heart. He forgot it anyway. That was the whole point. And so what happened was v'hishkifa. And he stood there, he considered it, v'hit bonein ba, and v'hit bonein. What does that word mean? What's the word? No, that's bonein. V'hit bonein. Yes, to introspect. Bonein, bina.
Yeah.
Bina, knowledge, yeah. Naturally, bina is not knowledge. That is understanding. Lehit bonein, to try and understand it yourself. Lehit bonein, but what did you say? Introspect. That's a very, very good translation. So he stood there introspecting and thinking about it. How long do you think he stood there for, trying to remember this bracha? Bearing in mind he's the chazan, and he's saying the chazoras nashatz. He gets to v'lam al shtinim, you can't remember it.
If it was anything like our lot, it couldn't have been too long.
How long do you think he stood there for?
5 minutes. 6 hours.
Half an hour. Any advance? What, Frank? Days.
Till Byron.
2 or 3 hours. He stood there for 2 or 3 hours.
Couldn't anybody tell him?
He couldn't remember it. Even after standing there for 2 or 3 hours, he could not remember it. Yeah, he's lost the minute for sure. Okay, so the versions, the different versions of this bracha is because even the author couldn't remember it, right? So Rabbi Lepra saying that there was a reason for that he said that there are lots of different versions. So your version says Oivecha for a start, which ours doesn't. And then you said, if I'm not mistaken, something about Malchut Zadon. Okay, Malchut Zadon. What does Malchut mean?
Come
on, Barbara, a bit more Meduyak, please. Malchut Zadon. Kingdom of. Thank you, kingdom of.
Evil.
Zadon, evil. Zadon is evil. So the kingdom of evil. Okay, that's what you've got. I've not got that. We've got Hazedim, haven't we? Yeah, but Hazedim. We've got Hazedim, which is the same root as Zadon, Zayin Dalet. Huh?
Zadon is Aramaic.
Okay, so
Zadon is Aramaic, and Hazedim is.
no, I don't know about that. It doesn't sound very Aramaic. What have you got, Hannah? You've got v'chol haminim karega, have you? And we've got v'chol. Come on, see if you can remember it, Frank, without looking. V'chol ha. You got haminim? You got minim? You got risha. Look, I've got risha as well. Okay, let me have a look at your art scroll, Hannah, please. Thank you. Hannah's art scroll says, and we have v'chol harisha karega yovedu. What have we got? Karega toved, yeah. V'chol oivei amcha mehera, and he's got v'chol oivei amcha mehera karetu. What have we got? That's the same. And he's got v'hazedin mehera, and you've got malchut zadon. Okay, so you can see that there's all sorts of different. Now, what have you got? You've got a whole load of different stuff all together. Okay, Goldie's got a nusach spard, and her one says, like the art scroll there. And then they've got a load more. What do we have? We have Vazedim of Malchut Zadon. What do we have? Mehera. Let's count them up. Mehera. Ta'aker. T'shaber. U'tomager. V'tachnia. 4 expressions which all mean. Wait a minute. I haven't got that. 4 expressions that all mean one way or another to break, to beat, to kill. All expressions of, we'll go through each one carefully. But the Nusach Sfard has got more than 4. Nusach Sfard says, Ta'aker, T'shaber, T'mager, T'chalim, Tashbirem, Tachniem. 6. They've got another 2, an extra 2. So they all mean the same thing, which means that
they knew their Pappenheimers. They were much more severe than the Ashkenazis.
So what does it mean? This v'hazedim mehira aker. What's aker?
Okay, it's uprooted.
Yeah, uproot. You should uproot. So these evil people should be uprooted to aker uta shaber,
to be broken,
uta mager,
to be
finished, but tachnia.
Should give in.
No. Tachnia means to be, to be downtrodden, humiliated. Yeah, that sort of downtrodden sort of bimheira be'amenu, speedily in our days. Okay, so why have we got 2 different versions here? Malchut Zadon there and Hazedim everywhere else. What is Malchut Zadon again, Barbara, please?
Rome, yeah.
Kingdom of arrogance. Okay, that's a good translation. There's me telling Rabbi Sachs he's got a good translation. I'm sure he would have been delighted to have known that I thought it was a good translation, but it is. Okay, so a kingdom of arrogance. And who was the most arrogant kingdom that there ever was? Rome. Okay, very apropos because we are coming up to Pesach. What's Rome got to do with Pesach?
What did
the Romans ever do for us? What has Rome got to do with Pesach? Correct. The Seder was put together during the Greco-Roman Empire. How do I know that? Rabbi Akiva is in the, yes, Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Tarfon, Rabbi Yeshua, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, etc. Yes, correct. How else do I know that the Seder was put together in the time of the Romans? Yes, because we lean. Why do we? I was talking about this on Shabbos in Manchester. I gave a shiur on how to do a proper Seder, and I shocked them all and told them they were all doing it wrong. Remember when you were sat around your table when you were little and you had to lean, right? And so you've got your glass of wine and you have to say, right, we have to lean. So you're like this, right?
You fill the wine.
And you're trying to lean and drink. So half of it goes down your shirt. The rest of it dribbles down your face. And it's really uncomfortable. Is that leaning? No, of course not. That's not what you're meant to do.
Back like the
You're
Romans
meant to
did.
be on a chaise longue.
Yeah,
That's
like
right.
the
And
Romans.
who was it that lay on a chaise longue? The Greco-Romans, correct. So that's how we know that Seder night was put together. Now, by the way, why do we lean to the left?
The heart. The heart.
Digestive doesn't clear in your edge.
Okay, so this is the kind of nonsense that Jeff was taught and that I was taught as well, right? The kind of nonsense was that if you lean to the left, it's less dangerous than leaning to the right. Okay, now that is possibly slightly true. Could you pour me some water, please? Because there is a very, very slight difference in the angle of the right main bronchus that comes off the trachea to the left main bronchus. You know what I'm talking about, the upside down tree, right? There is a slightly different angle.
That's because they're only.
But that isn't why you lean on the left-hand side. Why do you lean on the left-hand side?
Because there are only 2 lobes in the left lung.
The royalty, that's how they lean.
Yeah, but why? Why on the left side?
Because there are only 2 lobes in the left lung and 3 in the right, so it was less dangerous.
Nonsense.
I'm going the other way.
Isn't that
Nonsense.
true?
No, that's rubbish. That's what you were taught, but it's rubbish. Yes, until 1950, everybody was right-handed. Even if you were left-handed, you were made to be right-handed. Time of the Greco-Romans, everybody was right-handed. If you lean on your right-hand side, you can't get to the food because you're leaning on your right-hand side. So you lean on your left-hand side, you lean on your left-hand side, and you eat with your right hand. No. You had the food was on the table next to you. Everybody had their own little table, and you lay on a chaise longue with a table in front of you on your left side, and you ate with your right hand. That's how you did it. Nothing to do with the right main bronchus or the left main bronchus or the 3 lobes, 2 lobes. Nonsense. We were all taught the same rubbish. It's true. It's true.
No, I learned this in biology, not from my dad.
Why should you lean now?
Okay, very good question. Very good question, Paul. Why should we lean now? Well, I'll tell you what we shouldn't be doing. We shouldn't be sat at the table like this. Trying to, that's certainly something you should do. Well, that's because the Mishnah Brura says you have to lean. But what does it? Yeah, so you have to lean. You have to lean in a way which demonstrates your freedom. Now, that doesn't demonstrate your freedom. All it demonstrates is that you're going to need a dry cleaning bill for the wine all the way down your kittle, right? So you do what we do. We go into the lounge and we lie around on the couch and on the bean bags, and we demonstrate our freedom that we can schlock around and lie.
Seder or during the Seder?
Well, we do it all differently. We do Magid during the meal, so let's not go there. So that's anyway. How do we get onto that? Pesach, yes, the Romans. So what have the Romans ever done for us?
You have to lean?
Yes, you do have to lean, but you have to lean in a way which is demonstrating freedom, not which is demonstrating contortionism. Okay, so all this business at the table when you're leaning just to make it awkward is not right. Get a cushion and recline with a cushion and demonstrate that this is and make it look like you are a free person. When I was back in Manchester, we had a separate dining room. In the old days, you had houses with dining rooms, right? So I used to bring in
one day a year.
Yeah. I used to bring in my armchair from the lounge into the dining room, sat at the top of the table, festooned with cushions, and that's how I leaned. And that's how you're meant to do it. Not contortionism with you cupped up your left earlobe. So anyway, that's how you're meant to lean. What am I talking about that for? The Romans, Malchut Zadon, the kingdom of arrogance. That was the Romans. And this was written at the time where the Romans were very much in ascendancy. And why does it say in the Gemara then Sadukim? Why?
The Romans didn't like it.
Correct, because the Romans didn't like it. This Gemara is a censored version. The Gemara that we have is not the original version. There is a purer version of the Gemara. Some say there's an even purer one, and the most pure one they say is in the Vatican. which was with lots of other stuff. But there are lots of There are lots of little areas where the Gemara is censored, particularly places where it talks about Jesus. And there are people who've written the whole books and pointed out all these things. My son's quite into all this stuff, and he knows where all these he's into all the censorship things. But this is one of them. The Tzadukim were causing them trouble. That's true. But Malchut Zadon was really Rome, and so it's likely that this Gemara originally was against the Romans, not just the Tzadukim. Now, if you have a more general terminology, Valam al-Shinim, those slanderers, okay, could be anyone, couldn't it? So when the Romans come and say, you're saying a bracha that we should all be annihilated. Oh no, Gov, not us. It's not you we're talking about. It's the Tzadukim we're talking about. It's the Istim. It's all these other people, not you, right? It's a get-out clause, right? It's an opportunity for a get-out clause. And that's why Rabbi Lepper has told you there's so many different versions, because over the years there were different minim, there were different types of people who we wanted to get rid of. Now, when I say V'lam al-shtinim al tihi tikva v'chol risha karega toved and v'chol oivei amchan, well, let's translate it. Okay? V'lam al-shtinim al tihi tikva, for the slanderers, let there not be any hope. The slanderers there is the slanderers of God, meaning the Christians. The new version of Judaism, which they brought out back in that time. They were slanderers of God, as far as they were concerned. V'chol risha Karega Toved. And all the evil should disappear, or should be lost in a second, should be destroyed in a second. B'chol Oivei, you've got Oivecha, all your enemies, which is who are you talking to?
God,
or God's enemies. We've got a different one. V'chol Oivei Amecha, all the enemies of your people. Hopefully they're the same people. We were enemies of God or enemies of us, but we're talking about here in this, and all the enemies of your people, Mehera, speedily, Yikaretu, should be destroyed, cut off, Karet should be cut off, Vahazedim, and the evil ones, Mehera, should quickly, we said these already, Ta'akeh, uprooted, broken, finished, and downtrodden. They should all be got rid of, basically. Baruch atah Hashem, Shover Oivim, Umachnia Zedim. Shover, who breaks Oivim, enemies. Umachnia, who makes downtrodden. That's the verb there. Who makes downtrodden. Zedim, the evil ones. Something very interesting about that chatima, that end of that bracha. What is it? Different to all the others. Yes, two things. Two verbs. Don't normally have that. Shover oivim umachnia zedim. So this whole thing here, this whole bracha is steeped in historical context, because you've got to understand when it was brought about, which was at the time of a very great Roman persecution. It was the time of Rabbi Akiva, time of Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai, the time when they were not allowed to teach Torah, the time when they were not allowed to keep mitzvot. That's part of the Seder as well, isn't it? That's where they were in Bnei Brak. Where were they in Bnei Brak?
The learning.
Yes, but where were they?
In
underground. How do we know they were underground? Because it's dark. They didn't know it was time for davening. And the Talmidim came and told them. What were the Talmidim doing? They were keeping watch. They were standing guard. So this was a very terrible time. And so this bracha was, if you like, the Misha Berach for the Chayalim, if you like, of its time. What do we say in our Misha Berach LeChayalim? HaKadosh Baruch Hu, let's just get it.
You're saying anywhere in this, those people. No, you're not.
No. What I'm saying, the bracha, what I'm referring to in the Misha Berach is this: Yitain Adonai et oivenu hakamim aleinu nigafim lifnehem. What does that mean? Yitain Adonai et oivenu. Hashem should give et our oivenu, our enemies. Which enemies particularly? Hakamim aleinu, who rise up against us. Nigafim lifnehem. What's nigafim?
I think it's something.
It's a plague, isn't it?
Yeah.
Magifa, from Magifa.
Nigafim, they should be struck down before them, before our chayalim. This is a bracha for the chayalim. Okay, this is a Misha Megadem of Yaakov. Yivarechit chayalit tzva'agana Yisrael kochot habichon. Ha'omdim al mishmar atzenu, who standing on guard of our land, va'arei Eloheinu, and the cities of God. Yitain Adonai et Ravenu hakamim aleinu nigafim lifnehem. May Hashem give our enemies who rise up as them a magefa, a plague on them.
This is a
plague on your house. That's from this week's parsha. So that bracha was the equivalent of our bracha today for the soldiers. This is them saying, a plague on all the houses. Let them be all killed and broken and uprooted, and because they were downtrodden. They were in a real difficult situation. So this was a bracha to Hashem, a pleasing. Remember, where is this? It's in the section of Bakashot, the section of the Amida where we're asking for stuff. So what we're asking for here is relief from our enemies. You're not happy with that, Frank?
No, I'm not.
Go on then.
We've been talking for years, you refer to privilege, Esrei, we talk about 18 brachot. And if this had come in, I don't think we'd still be talking about 18 brachot. We'd be talking about 19 brachot. It wouldn't have stood the test of time getting the arithmetic wrong. And going back to my earliest days, I was taught, want a better phrase, that there are actually 18 brachot, and to a certain extent, a curse here. This is the curse rather than bracha. We're now looking, and we're not saying there's nothing for us. We're not praying for these people to change their ways. We're not saying that they should be improved or bettered. We're saying to Hashem, just get rid of them. And the bracha comes at the end because we're praising Hashem for getting rid of them.
Okay. Right. Okay. Let me say that loudly so that the other people can hear, because I don't. When you listen to it back, you know it's not your fault. But when you listen to it back, you can't hear it. I know that because I listened to my own shiur last week because I was doing it in Manchester. I did one last week, so I wanted to hear what I said last year, so I didn't have to repeat it. And I couldn't hear anything that anybody in the room said. So let me say that again. Frank says that he was taught that the Shemonah Esrei is 18 brachot, and this isn't a bracha at all. It is a curse, and it's a curse on our enemies. And I can see the attraction of that argument. Clearly, some people don't agree with you because it's called Birkat Haminim, the bracha of the minim, which is difficult, I understand. And the chatima is Baruch Atah Hashem. But you got out of that by saying the end is that we are blessing Hashem for having got rid of them. But it's a very negative thing. And the most important thing that Frank said there was, why are we praying for them to be destroyed? Why aren't we praying for these malshinim, these slanderers, these new neo-Christian, Judeo-Christians? Why aren't we praying for them to see the light and do tshuva and to repent from their evil ways? Why are we praying for their downfall? And that's a very good question. So do we have, and in fact, you're not the first to ask that question. I read it earlier on today, but I can't remember who it was now, that asked that question. So go on then, what's the answer?
Before, it was a get-out clause from Haminim, because it didn't just refer to Jews, it referred mainly to the Roman Empire. And if it refers to the Roman Empire, like nobody was the non-politically correct. Nobody today prays for the Nukba to see the light. We pray for them to be killed. In the same way, the Jews at that time would have adored because they didn't consider it to be for Jews.
I think that must be right, mustn't it? The fact that we are praying for their downfall has to mean that we're not talking about Jews who are malshinim. It has to be, because otherwise Frank's question is unanswerable. Because there's something very interesting that I saw, and actually my son Dan pointed out to me, that there's in this yesterday's Sedra, last Sedra 2 days ago, there's a very strange, the whole thing's very strange with all these skin disease and what have you. But there's one very interesting point. If you have a skin problem there, surat, I'm not going to call it leprosy because that's a bad translation, surat on your skin, you have to go to the Kohen and he checks it out, and yes, no, locks you up for 7 days, quarantine, comes back, etc. If you are covered top to toe in this stuff, there's not an inch of you that isn't covered with this stuff. What's halacha?
That you're pure.
You're pure. How does that work?
Because it's all the same.
So?
And you become impure when there's a spot of healthy skin appears.
Okay, that's true. So what does it signify, this tzorat? We all know this, don't we? Lashon hara, right? So it's a manifestation of a bad trait. Okay, it's a physical manifestation. By the way, this was the first recorded episode of what we call in modern medicine somatization. You know what that is? Somatization is where you get a physical illness from a psychological origin. So, for example,
psychosomatic.
Psychosomatic. So, for example, there are those who believe that ME is a psychosomatic illness.
ME, multiple.
Myelo, something or other, encephalitis. I can't remember. ME, yuppie flu, chronic fatigue syndrome.
Oh, yeah.
Fibromyalgia is another one. Anyway, so it's a manifestation of something bad. So Reb Shimshon Raphael Hirsch says that the person is not made tamei if he's completely top to toe, because he's so bad that he's beyond redemption, and that the idea of sending him out michutz lamachaneh for 7 days is for him to contemplate his Aveira of Lashon Hara, and to do tshuva, and when he does tshuva, he'll come back and he'll be cured. But this fellow is top to toe bad, and so there's no point sending him out because there's no hope for him. Barbara's got a sour face on. Jeff's got a sour face. Frank's shaking his head. And I said in my drosha on Shabbos, far be it from me to disagree with Reb Shimshon Raphael Hirsch, but I disagree. Right?
You send them out of the camp also to contemplate and to meditate and everything, but also not to infect other people with their Lashon Hara.
Well, that's true as well. Yeah. But so I was unhappy.
And nobody's going to go near him because everybody knows.
Okay, that's it. Fair enough. Okay, so there we've got Hannah supporting Reb Shimshon Raphael Hirsch. I'm not happy with it, and I'll tell you what I said about this. And I discussed it with Dan, and we sort of came up with this sort of idea. There is nobody who is bad top to toe. Not even you, Philip. Nobody who is bad top to toe. There is always something that you can find positive about a person. And if you see a person who is bad from top to toe, then the problem is you. Not the person. The problem is you. If you cannot find anything positive, you know, we all were told, weren't we, by our parents, if you've got nothing nice to say nothing. Yeah. If you've got nothing nice to say nothing, right? There's always something positive you can find to say about somebody. And if you can't, and the person is completely bad, then the problem is with you, not with them. And that's why they're tahor. You have to turn it around and look at yourself. How did we get onto that? No idea. So yes, we must be talking about the non-Jews, because Frank's point that if they're Jews, we ought to be praying that they should do tshuva, and we have done, haven't we? Hashivenu, we've already done that. So this can't be, but it was couched in those sort of terms so that it was a get-out clause, because what you didn't want, because the Romans were, they understood Hebrew, they could listen to what they were saying. You didn't want them to come along and give them an excuse for top you. So it was phrased, and that's why so many different versions arose, because there were all different versions of it. But the meaning was very clear. It's talking about the Malchut Zadon. That's a very, very, I think that's the best version, the Malchut Zadon, because it's talking about the kingdom of evil. That probably is a later version, Malchut Zadon, because they wouldn't have been able to say that, I think, initially. And certainly the Gemara calls it the Birkat Sadukim. So it's called the Birkat Haminim. Now the Minim were heretics. They were Jews. The Minim were the Jews that became Christians. And so what we're doing here, I'll just read you what Rav Bazak says. No, not Rav Bazak, Rav Bick says. He says the original framework was clearly the Malchut Zadon, was clearly the Romans. But he says, to this, the sages added the Birkat Haminim on heretics. This clearly refers to Jews, like in the ancient Judeo-Christian sects. By including them together with the evil empire, the Malchut Zadon, the sages are indicating, listen, Frank, that we are no longer hoping for their repentance, but for their destruction. They are no longer seen as sinners, but as representatives of the something of evil, the axis of evil, no, the sin of evil, the sin of evil. And listen what he writes. And this, I imagine, he says, leaves us all feeling more than a little uncomfortable. Exactly what Frank has said. Now, Rabbi Yehuda ben Yakar refers to this famous section, and there's another Gemara in Brachos that tells and this is so modern. In fact, I'm gonna try and find the Gemara, because no, I've got the English here. I'll read you the English of the Gemara. Listen how modern this is in terms of psychology. There were some ruffians in the neighborhood of Rabbi Meir who greatly oppressed him. Rabbi Meir prayed that they might die. Huh?
And Bruria came on and said,
very good. Hannah's learned this Gemara. Bruria. Who was Bruria? His wife. Rabbi Meir's wife was Bruria. She came along and said to him, you can't do that. On what do you base yourself? And then it says it's written, sins shall disappear from the earth. It does not say sinners shall disappear. It says sins shall disappear. And furthermore, she says, keep reading to the end of the pasuk, and the evil will be no more. Chata'im od einam, or sha'im, was it? It's in the end of Baruch Nafshi, isn't it? Go on, I can never remember this. Don't say it often enough. Hang on a minute. What do we say? It's right at the end of it. Yitamu chata'im min haaretz. You shall remove chata'im, sins, not mechata'im, the ones who do the sins. Ursha'im od einam, and ursha'im, and the evil will be no more. Okay, evil will be no more. When sins will cease, there will be no more sinners. This is Beruria speaking, his wife, to Rabbi Meir. What you should do is pray that they will repent, like Frank says. Told you weren't the first one to say it, Frank. Beruria said it. and then there will be no more sinners. He prayed for them, and they repented. So here we see that the sages were opposed to praying for the personal destruction of sinners. Right. Now, why did I say that's so modern? Because you're not allowed to say anymore to somebody, you're a naughty boy. What you have to say, Barbara, is that was a very naughty thing that you did. Right? You're not allowed to say you're a naughty boy. The Gemara. It's there in the Gemara. Okay, Bruria was ahead of her time. So we say also in Rosh Hashanah, there's a prayer that says we refer to evil going up in smoke, but not evildoers. So, but here we explicitly ask God to bring about the destruction of the informers, heretics, and enemies. How are we to understand this? Well, he says quite simply, there is no simple answer to this question, but he says that really it's not a matter of being politically correct. It's merely a matter of practicality. When you're under the kosh, you pray for the destruction of your enemies. And, you know, on Motzei Shabbat, what were we doing? Don't know about you, but I was praying for the destruction of our enemies pretty hard. So a fascinating bracha, that one. And maybe that's why, maybe you're right, Frank, maybe that's why it's called the Shemonah Esrei, because it don't fit in with all the others. So maybe I'm allowed to call it the Shemonah Esrei. Can I go back to calling it the Shemonah Esrei? No, okay. Warren says I have to carry on calling it the Amida. Any questions in the room? I'm with Frank first.
The actual position of this bracha, because it's completely different from the rest, why is it in the middle of this group as opposed to being placed at the end? Or
okay, so the question is from Frank, why is it where it is? It was the add-on. Why add it on in the middle? You'd have thought you'd add it on at the end, at least at the end of the bakashot, yeah? Yeah, that's where I would have put it on if I was adding something. Yeah, but let's have a look where it actually is. Where does it come? Immediately after? No. Where does it come after? What's the one before? Melechu at Tzedakah u'mishpat. It's judgment, right? We've asked for Tzedakah u'mishpat, but not for them. Yeah, that's right. We want justice and righteousness, but not for these lot. These lot, you know what we just said about Tzedakah u'mishpat, God? Not for this lot. I think that's why it goes there. Could be there as well, yeah.
You're going to judge here. We've got all the writers.
Or yeah, but you could all it's a contrast, isn't it? So yeah, but get rid of all that lot. But ala tzadikim, ala chasidim, we'll do that next week, please God.
We won't.
Well, stay the night. Okay. Whenever we'll do it the next time, please God. Any questions on Zoom? Yes, David.
For some reason, they used the word mehera 3 times. Why couldn't we just said why did it need to use the word mehera?
I think again, I think that's a good question, and I think it's urgency. Remember where they were and at what time they were under very, very difficult circumstances. When we were davening on Motzei Shabbat, we didn't want them to be destroyed next week or the week after, but right now, before they could launch all them things. And I think that double, triple expression, I think it's there deliberately, and I think it's to give that sense of urgency, that sense of feeling that they're right under the kosh, and we need this bimheira biyamenu in our days, not in the next generation, eventually, right now. And I think it's for emphasis.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Hannah?
Can a Jew be considered Oyev Amcha?
Absolutely, you can. A Jew can. The question was, can a Jew be the enemy of the people? You don't know any Jews who are enemies of the Jews? How about Noam Chomsky for one? How about that? What about that Jonathan? What's his name? That whatever. Yeah, all the. Yeah, I can think of yes. The answer to your question is yes.
If the bracha was an addition. It's not because you put it in the middle, because you encompass it with that brachot that already exists. And that way it won't get lost.
Okay, that's a fair comment, Frank. Fair comment from Hannah. She says that if you were adding something in, you would put it right in the middle so that it wouldn't get lost. Because if it's an add-on at the end, it wouldn't be toughest. It wouldn't catch on. But if you put it in the middle, surrounded by all the other ones that you know so well, it's a fair point. Yeah, it's a fair point.
Very apparent if it was at a time when you didn't want.
Yeah, you just sort of lose it in the middle. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, and it's not. It's number 12. Yeah. Okay. These are all very interesting points. I'm sure there's a grain of truth to them all. Right. Okay. Next week is Seder night, so there will not be a Tefilah Shiur. Well, yes, you can if you like, or pop round to me if you like. Tomorrow night, those of you in the area, 3 rabbis. I'm talking about Kitniot again.
Change your mind.
No, I've not changed my mind. And Stuart is talking about, I don't remember now, what's Stuart talking about? Yeah, good. What's Stuart talking about? Oh, Arabanim. He's talking about the 4 sons. And Mendel will be telling us stories of the road. So it will all be very entertaining. I'm sure you're all very welcome. Laila Tov, everyone.